is the deal. So glad George started the recording because we have an agenda that's check-in is the first item and review the agenda is the second item. So this is a format that we'll probably use as we go forward. So on the check-in, our model is your name, your branch, and one thing. I'm Teresa Elamine in the Fannie Lou Hamer branch in Columbus, Georgia. And my one thing is actually a good thing. My apartment management is kicking me out, but they've given me 6 months of free rent to get out. So I've been living here for 3 months rent free, and I'm getting ready to live here for another 3 months rent free. And I found a beautiful new apartment with 400 square feet more than I got here. That's all the good part. It's going to cost me a pretty penny to actually move my 9,000 pounds of furniture. But I'm happy to be making a change. So we'll go with Alan, who was the first person on the call other than George. So we'll go Alan, Joan, Pat, Samantha.
And George.
And George.
Hi, I'm Alan Haber in the Ann Arbor Ypsilanti branch. And I continue working on the Ann Arbor Bicentennial. We had a very good program for Martin Luther King Day. People come into Liberty Plaza to say, "What is my dream?" And that was very positive from the heart. And we are endeavoring on President's Day to write a letter to the president as a collective endeavor from our communities. And Women's Day will help reactivate the Ann Arbor Ypsilanti branch. And Earth Day is coming up, and we work for the bicentennial, that a threshold to Ann Arbor's 3rd century. And as I will report, reparations is on the agenda.
Okay, Joan, remember the order: Joan, Pat, and then Samantha. So when Joan finishes talking, Pat, you start talking. And likewise, go ahead, Joan.
Hi, yeah, and I'm Joan Goddard in the San Jose, California branch, and I have good news that we have had reservoirs filling, but the rain is stopping from being overwhelming for most people. We have not had it too bad here at our particular part of the South Bay. So that's a relief. Thank you.
Pat O'Brien from Cape Cod branch. I'm in Orleans. I live in Orleans on the Cape. And I am facing the possibility of having a knee replacement on March 1st. So I'm really in fear and trepidation about that, and I'm thinking maybe I won't even do it, but I have to put the ducks in a row to get it done. So that's what I'm trying to do at the moment. As far as reparations is concerned, I guess we have a report later on, right? So Samantha.
Remember the drill. You talk about how tight you are with meetings, Pat. Name, branch, and the one thing. So you're done.
Okay.
Samantha.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Samantha. I'm with the Southern Piedmont branch. I've been running around for a change, and I'm a little beat up. I'm still recovering a bit from COVID, but so the running around gets me beat up quicker. So my one thing actually has a lot to do with reparations. I went on a city tour, a 2-hour walking tour yesterday with a activist, uh, an activist religious leader in our community, a man named Greg Jarrell. He runs the Charlotte. I'm sorry, I forget the name of it right now. Not the Charlotte Community Think Tank, but he works with Shemaiah. She works for him actually, and he did a tour of the city. We went from the ward, which is the richest ward, to the second ward, which is the poorest ward. And in between, we studied the history of Charlotte from before the 1600s, and it was incredible, and it was wonderful. And yes, we need reparations. I mean, I mean,
Yes.
there's no not
Thank you, Samantha. George, give me the meeting ID because I'm trying to nudge these other folks with an email. So give me the meeting ID before we call on Sheila. George.
George is
George,
muted.
I
George
know.
is muted.
Unmute yourself, George, and give me the meeting ID so I can put it in the email.
Sorry. There's two different screens, one for unmuting and one for giving you the ID. The ID is 872-9546-7260. I'm glad y'all are
Sheila,
Yes.
Sheila, we're introducing ourselves with our name, our branch, and one thing.
Okay. Okay, my name is Sheila Harper. I'm with Philadelphia Wolf. One thing, well, we just had our fifth anti-racism session this past Sunday. It was very well. It was good. It was good. It was very well balanced. There is also, I don't know if anyone had an opportunity to see the PBS special that was on Channel 12, Channel 12 in Philly, dealing with reparations and using the Evanston, Illinois, and the situation in California as its basis of discussion. I actually saw it, I think, opening night last Thursday. I did actually, and at that point, they just showed excerpts from the actual interview. So I think that we can still find it because it showed up on Monday night. I thought it was Tuesday, but it showed up on Monday night.
You,
but I think you can find it on
thank
PBS.
you, Sheila. You've gone way beyond the one good thing. See,
okay.
Pat O'Brien thinks she's tight, but Pat, you seem tight. I can really model tight for you. So George, if you could do the name, branch, one good thing, and then immediately put up the proposed agenda. Thank you, George.
George Friday. I'm in the Southern Piedmont branch with my partner, Samantha Turner. And the one good thing is I'm looking forward to a meeting Monday night. We're going to have a follow-up of our MLK event in many ways, where we're actually planning events for every quarter, and looking forward to what we'll put together for Women's History Month in March.
Thank you, George. Please put up the meeting agenda. So the agenda, we've done the first item, of the check-in. Now we're reviewing the remainder of the agenda. And I'll just describe what the plan is for all of us in our different cities, to give a report on how things are going with reparations at the municipal level. If you have anything, if not, what's going on at the state level, because I know big stuff is going on in California. Then the visioning item is for us to start thinking over the next 2 years how we're going to report out to the Wolf International Congress in 2025 the work that we've done in the US section around reparations. So in other words, we're starting to vision the workshop that this subcommittee will do in 2025. So instead of completely going out of business at the end of 2024, we'll be working on our workshop for the International Congress. So I'm asking if people can start envisioning what that looks like at this meeting. And then the last thing on the agenda is setting the date for the February meeting, which I'm proposing that we meet on the third Thursday of each month. So that's the agenda. So Alan, we'll let you start with what's going on with the reparations ordinance in Ypsilanti, Ann Arbor. George, you can take the agenda down for that.
Okay.
Wait, first of all, I'm sorry. The whole idea of reviewing the agenda was to see if you had any additions or any objections to the agenda that's proposed. It's a very simple agenda to start out the new year. The visioning part will give each of us 3 minutes to say how we think we're doing and the next 2 years will go. So hearing no additions, Alan, please go forward. And if you could take a couple of no more than 3 minutes for your report, that would be great. And George will give you the 1 minute warning.
Okay. So I'm in Ann Arbor, Michigan, Ann Arbor Ypsilanti branch. Ann Arbor's bicentennial is in 2024 from 1824. And similarly, Ypsilanti's bicentennial just began 1823 to this year. And I'm seeking, with some help, to bring together as the agenda for this bicentennial what is the agenda into our third century. And two of the central questions on that are the repair of the relationship with the Potawatomi people and the Three Fires Confederacy that were put out of this Ann Arbor area with the founding of the city and the establishment of the United States Authority, and the reparations in each of the institutions of Ann Arbor for the discriminatory practices, as well as some connection with the national effort and the liaison with the United Nations decade. So Ann Arbor becomes informed of what has been the result of this decade over the last 10 years, which the end of which corresponds with our bicentennial or our entering into our third century. So I have connections with a lot of people in all of this. I would not say it has gelled. The agenda for the official people of Ann Arbor does not include an agenda for our next century, but there is a lot of favorable appreciation for my initiatives in the African American community and in the Native American community. I hope for the best. That's it.
Well, thank you. So we'll use basically the same order that we use for the check-in. So Joan, then Pat, then Samantha, then Sheila, and then George, and then I'll go last. So Joan.
Okay, let's see. Locally, we will have a meeting early February. The African American Community Services Agency is taking the lead on working to support state reparations. And the next step, I think, is that we will be doing resolutions in the various towns as well as the county government. The state level, as Teresa mentioned, is quite involved and active. And most of you, I think, have seen or heard about the 500-page report, which is a national history of the need for reparations, the reasons for reparations, basically the history of what the heck has been going on, and then the California information is added into the national information on that. So if you haven't seen it yet, I'll put the link in the chat for the Office of the Attorney General of the state, which is coordinating and providing a lot of staffing for the state reparations task force, which is quite a wonderful group of people. They're having an in-person and virtual meeting at the end of the month, the 27th and 28th. So thank you.
Thank you, Joe. So Pat, you're next. Stop reading that book or whatever you're doing and join the meeting.
I'm not reading a book. I just was looking up the city council passed. I told you the Boston City Council passed a resolution to have a study group to study reparations for Boston. So so I found this other website called embraceboston.org, which proposes $1 billion for reconstruction and rehabilitation fund to support biopic institutions. And they have a partnership with the higher education reparations education with the University of Massachusetts, and they have an engagement task force, and there's a resource list, and I can put the website in the chat if people want to look up what the resources are for this particular partnership for studying the reparations and solutions and so on, and what that fund will be doing. So and there is, as far as the Cape Cod is concerned, we did have a WILF meeting in which we had like 8 people at, which was very good for us at this point, and to plan the International Women's Day, but it doesn't really have a lot to do with reparations. So, but to be continued on that, because as long as we could get people to come to meetings and try to design plans for an event for Women's Day, maybe we can move further on with the reparations issue as well. So that's it for me, and I will write the website in the chat.
Well, thank you, Pat. Okay, Samantha, you're on. 3 minutes or less.
Okay, so I think, I believe reparations is the only solution to what's going on in this country. I would like to pressure local, state, and federal government to mandate funding to restore and rebuild communities and neighborhoods that were affected in Charlotte by urban renewal, white flight, redlining. They need to bring back schools and parks and transportation and businesses to those areas they just destroyed and made parking lots. They need to bring back truly affordable housing. And I believe the federal government needs to have monetary restitution for impacted people. I think state could be mandated to um, to mitigate or erase and make whole the effects from um, urban renewal. It's horrendous what's gone on in Charlotte.
Well, the one thing you didn't do, Samantha, is say what the work is in Charlotte on what you think should be done and how an ordinance will get passed in Charlotte, because you talk more about the visioning part. So is there anything going on in Charlotte that you or George could talk about that is going to lead to a resolution or an ordinance being passed by December of 2024? Do you have a plan?
Um, my plan right now is to educate people because, Teresa, honestly, this is not talked about much in Charlotte. There are so many issues, unfortunately, urgent issues. I mean, we talk about all the issues that are caused by the need for reparations, but we don't talk about the reparations. That's like a bad
Well,
word.
thank you, Samantha.
Okay.
But when I give my report, I'll talk about how you make a plan. So, George, do you have anything more to add about the Charlotte Southern Piedmont area
Um,
and what you're actually doing?
yes, I know that in November, uh, because Raven had a lot of passion for the history stuff, we got a lot done, and not so much in December. But we're back on that now in terms of tracing the history that is our which will inform our education piece. But that's just Gaston County. My nephew, who's in the 9th grade, is at Ashbrook High School. I think I mentioned this to you, Samantha. He has a Black history course. I'm shocked. But when I go to find out who that history teacher is who can help us with the history here in Gaston County, I also find out that the school is becoming de facto segregated because they're going to some other school model where people can enroll to go to this much better school. And of course, those will be the white people. But in the meantime, the work is putting together that history that is used for education and what's happening in Mecklenburg County based on our meeting Monday and our meeting Monday coming up is we told folks that we're going to have to start regularly going to city council meetings to push our agenda. And that agenda includes a large number of things that do call for the need around reparations: housing, education, employment. And that's with folks that Samantha's connected to as well. And getting people to go to the city council meetings and show up regularly is one of the steps of the plan. That's it for me.
Well, thank you, George. Sheila, if you could go next and talk about, because the one thing that we know, like in Boston, work is being done by other entities, but we will still count those cities. Hopefully, there's something that can happen in Cape Cod, Pat, but we'll talk about that when we get to the vision. But Sheila, what's happening in the Philadelphia area in terms of an actual ordinance?
Well, forgive me, first of all, earlier, because I came in late, I didn't realize that I thought that I was giving my report then. So anyway, in terms of an ordinance, as far as I know, the Quakers are doing something here in Philadelphia, which I mentioned a few months ago. I think that's like $500 million. That's not the Quakers, it's one Quaker school. Outside of that, there is, to my knowledge, no city ordinance and no existing state commonwealth ordinance. One of the questions that I would like to put out to this group is whether there is a template, a boilerplate in which that ordinance can be introduced, whether it came from Illinois or California, where I could find that template so that we can. Our city is about to go through a major change. It's mayoral election coming up, the primary in May, and we've had a lot of city council people resign to run for that position. So therefore, we're having a major changing of the guard. And so it would be a good opportunity to present it. A lot of the new coming, council people are young people who definitely understand and would likely move this forward. But in order to do that, we would need a template or a boilerplate or something. So that's my 2 cents. And I would also recommend that people go to watch that PBS special on what Evanston, Illinois is currently doing and California. That's it.
Thank you, Sheila. Well, George, for my time, I want to do my report in my visioning part. So I want you to time me on basically 6 minutes. And then we'll go back around to everybody else for the 3 minutes around the visioning part. And remember, George, we need to take a break around a quarter of and just say for sure that we all agree to February 16th, which would be the next meeting. I believe February 16th is the third Thursday. So if everybody could start thinking and looking at their calendars while I'm talking to see if February 16th works for you, because that would only take a few seconds to confirm that. So George, if you could start my clock ticking.
Okay.
So give me a 3-minute warning and then a 1-minute warning. So the Fannie Lou Hamer branch in Columbus, Georgia, initiated the call for reparations in July of 2022. We put the city council on notice, and Sheila, this is how it works. You pull together a community-based task force of people you usually work with in the community. That's what I did. And we all agreed that absolutely reparations is a necessity, given all the history of lynching and all the poverty in Columbus. And so the person who is our community historian, he and I and a few other people came together and formed a task force. So I'm the person who goes and agitates with the city council, because the ordinance has to be passed by an elected body for it to be real, and they have to agree to put money in the ordinance. So I thought we could do it fairly quickly and have it done by Juneteenth of this year. But I'm seeing now that it's probably going to be closer to the fall of 2024. So we need at least a good 18 months to work on it. And so what we're focusing on are 2 areas: criminal justice and housing. So the ordinance will talk about the gentrification that is on steroids in Columbus, which is making a whole bunch of Black people homeless. If I didn't have a guaranteed monthly income, I would be among these people being evicted and becoming homeless. So we will be looking at the Evanston model, which focused in on housing. So throughout the world, many of the countries are focused in on housing for reparations, like the Afro-Brazilians are focused in on housing. So our ordinance will be about money for housing, which may include rent control, and then also about reforms in policing, so that so many folks are not being killed and hurt by the police, and also that the young people are having more so that they aren't turning to the crime. We've had 7 murders so far this year in Columbus. So public safety and housing will be our 2 areas. And we are really just getting started. So, George, that's my report. Yeah, that's my report on what we're doing in Columbus. Now, just to give you an idea of what I mean by the visioning part, don't go to sleep on us, Pat. Are you meditating or you sleep? Well, at any at any rate, on
You
the
don't know what anybody else is doing because you have your picture up, not, you're in live. So
I can,
no.
but I can see everything. So you may not be able to see my messy look today. I'll take my camera off at some point. But Samantha didn't have her camera on, neither does Sheila. So we've only been able to see you, Alan.
I know. So you'll
Joan.
focus on me. Thank you very much.
Well, just stop, Pat, because you're taking up time. So, George, I'm beginning again for my 3 minutes of visioning, and I probably won't take 3 minutes. But the idea of visioning, what we're gonna do, is how do we do for all of the people involved in this process? How do we do for them what Sheila is asking? Because what I realize is not everybody is an organizer. And this is a process that requires organizing. Pat does not live in Boston, but I do know Boston. And there are lots of organizers in Boston. So in August of this year, the Southern Anti-Racism Network, which is our main partner here in Columbus with the Fannie Lou Hamer branch, we're actually the fiscal sponsor for the Fannie Lou Hamer branch. So on August 5th, we will begin the Up South, Down South Solidarity Tour. And that will be a 6-city tour. DC, Baltimore, Philly, New York, Providence, and Boston. I have people in all those cities who are pulling together host committees. We'll have events, and the topic will be UN Decade Reparations, No to NATO. So we're making the connection between those areas of work. So I got a whole bunch of people in Philly, by the way, Sheila, and hopefully you could join the host committee. But I have all my radical socialist friends in Philly and all my Black radical friends in Philly. And so that is my visioning of how we organize, especially with this national campaign. So we got branches in all those places except for Providence and New York. And the idea will be when I leave Providence, there will be a Wolf branch there. And the same for New York. So that's my visioning point. So we'll begin again with visioning. So how do you envision the next 2 years, Alan, in terms of us accomplishing our task? Big picture. Big picture. Unmute yourself, Alan. We can't hear you. So
Yeah,
George,
let me just gather my thoughts for a moment and pass on.
Oh, okay, Joan, are you ready? And George, remember 3 minutes for each person.
Okay, let's see. In terms of looking far ahead, that's one thing. But in terms of the coming months, as you were saying, Teresa, this year, basically, working towards more. What I'm doing right now is to work on our branches participation, and we've had a couple sessions, and we'll be having a group get together. and I'm also reaching out to groups like the Showing Up for Racial Justice Surge group. And that process is something that is in conjunction with the county group that I mentioned from the African American Community Services Agency. The state task force is going to do a report with recommendations, but then there will be a lot of work to enact, to make actual working towards their recommendations and getting the reparations actually to happen. So I think that our work is cut out for us. We'll be working on educating the public, but also primarily, of course, the government agencies. And we will be part of a larger group. We will not be doing this on our own. And we will also be focusing on Santa Clara County and California as far as what is happening. Hadn't really, of course, known that we were going to be talking about visioning right now, which may be what Alan is working with too. But I think this is a good process, a good part of the process. Thank you. I can't think of anything else to say right now.
Well, thank you, because see this visioning part, because this is a 2-year project. So the visioning part is going to be part of all of our meetings. So Pat, you're next.
Can you tell me when your tour is beginning?
August 5th in DC.
And what day of the week is that?
I'm not sure.
Okay. I'm wondering, and then how long do you spend in each one of the groups? Because I think, we can talk about visioning what you might be able to do or what we might be able to do as far as meeting with you or helping that along.
Well, I don't need that kind of help. The tour is sponsored by the Southern Anti-Racism Network. So it's based on the relationships that we already have. And we have been committed to reparations since 2014, when we started getting people to come to Columbus to talk about reparations. So this has been going on for quite some time. We're almost 10 years in this process in terms of Columbus. So what you're supposed to be doing now is talking about your vision for Massachusetts, Cape Cod, Boston, and how we get to the point where we're gonna have people educated, etc. So George, if you could start Pat's time now.
It's not past time?
No, I'm telling the George to start your time now.
Oh, okay.
So you have 3 minutes.
It seems to me that we can envision working with the Embrace Boston group and the group of UMass partnership with about educating around reparations to get to Cape Cod Community College to become also a partner in that partnership, and also the Atlantic Black Box program that we had spoke about earlier. We're definitely having I can't remember her name right this minute, Meadow Dibble, who to meet with her and figure out with her what we can do for Cape Cod reparations journey, and how can we proceed, let's say over the next 2 years, so that maybe by the time your tour comes, we can have some kind of a report or some kind of an event or some kind of a collaboration. How's that?
that sounds good, but I don't want to take away from anybody else's time, but we'll circle back to that if we have time. So Samantha, then Sheila, then George. And then we'll come back to Alan whenever he's ready.
So I envision working with the partners that we have and new partners and organizing for focused support on the issue. It's going to take a lot of education. So the first thing we have to do is mention it and talk about it at every meeting we're on. So, and I'm on meetings all day long, so, and with community partners, so they'll be hearing it and we'll be getting them used to the idea. And when, we're ready to sign for an ordinance, they'll be on board.
We'll talk a little bit more about the organizing process, Samantha, at some point. So Alan, are you ready?
Yes, I sort of remembered what I'm doing for the moment. So as I've said, we're engaged in the bicentennial threshold to our next century or the future, which in some way all of us are whenever our communities were founded. And so I'm hoping developing an ordinance. And the person who said, is there a template for the ordinance? I very much support that and hope that somewhere in this, that template can be generated or shared. But from whatever the framework is to lay out, have the Ann Arbor community, black and white, lay out the kinds of changes that are needed on the basis of a structural analysis of the institutions of the city since its founding in housing and employment and agriculture and policing and so on. And there's somebody who is working on that. And we're trying to see the framework of the bicentennial reflect a structural sense of how this city and its county has developed. And so an ordinance that would see what can be done locally and in the county context, since wealth differentiations are very great, and then referencing what is needed at the national level. And I remember and I'm sharing the analysis that if there was actually to be a wealth redress of the gap that has developed, that would involve a payment to every descendant of slavery of about $200,000. And that would redress things in a gross financial way without talking institutionally. So at least to put that there is a federal element.
Time's up.
Yes.
Oh, time's up, Alan. So we'll go to Sheila. Sheila, based on what you've heard, the template that you asked about, there are a couple of them. The Evanston, Illinois, which you referenced, is the primary template that people are looking at in the United States. But we can't do it exactly that way. So it has to fit with what your community is willing to do.
Well, as you know, Philadelphia is one of the largest poor cities in America. It's approaching 48, approaching 50%, which means that, we have a very poor city and we have a lot of old houses that are dilapidated, falling apart. There's a lot of gentrification like it is in every other city, driving up taxes. In terms of visioning, a few things, because I know I listened to the last meeting. I couldn't be there because a lot of times, well, we'll talk about that when we get to it, in terms of the time in the day. But I think that the national one that Mr. Honorable John Conyers did. I don't know if it needs, I know she said that it was reviewed and updated, but if you've been doing something, you know what they say about if you keep doing the same thing and you keep getting the same result, then you must do something different. Okay, something's the matter because it's been 40 years. I think I've heard education going on a lot in even our conversation today. I think it's really important that we do that education and that groundwork because those, of course, reparations and affirmative action are two issues that are really the sticking points. So it's important that once we put out whatever it is that we put out, and in my mind, I see social media campaigns, educational online campaigns to bring in young people, social media blitzes or whatever. I see that happening from a local standpoint, but I think that before we even introduce it, we have to. I think it's critical that we educate because we're going to have people like right out the gate, they're going to say, oh, heck no, $200,000 or whatever. So, the justification, there is one video that we showed in our anti-racism discussion this past Sunday. It's a TED Talk, and it's talking about anti-racism. And he really deals with some nuances that were really important, like what is it to be anti-racist? Not to just not be racist. I don't use the N-word or whatever, so therefore I'm not racist. But he talked about the action steps that we're doing right here, right now, when we're starting to talk about reparations and how we're going to do it. But he really brought home that
Sheila,
little piece.
Sheila,
Okay.
your time
Mhm.
is up.
Okay.
So George, how much time do we have left in the meeting?
We have 8 minutes left. I didn't want to interrupt Sheila, but we're at the point where we need to confirm the next meeting.
Yeah, we are past that point. So I had asked the question earlier, is February 16th, 2 p.m. good for everybody?
Not
2
for me.
p.m. is really challenging for me because I work. So it's like, okay.
Well,
The evenings are better, but that's
Sheila, it's a yes or no question.
well, at
Joan
2
said
o'clock,
yes.
then no. 2 o'clock, no.
Okay, Alan?
2 o'clock is okay, but it could be 4 o'clock also. So maybe if there were another time that would work for Sheila,
okay.
we could inquire
Stop, Alan. Stop. Sheila, are you saying you could do it later in the day?
Yes, I can.
What
But 2
time?
o'clock.
What's the earliest time you can do it later?
5:30 would be perfect.
Well, 5:30 would be 3:30 in California. Would that work for you, Joan?
I'm sorry, I have to count out on my fingers all the time. I think it would be earlier than that. And I am concerned that not only those of us who are here today, but other people. So I think it's good that we're looking at later times. Thank you.
Well, so 5:30 is the earliest that Sheila can do it. And I'm okay for 5:30 on the 16th. So the question is everybody okay of the people who are here? So
it's a possible, I have an important doctor's appointment on the 16th, but I'm not sure of the time exactly, but I think probably 5:30 would be okay. I have to drive to Hyannis, which is a long ways away.
Great. So 5:30, 3 hours earlier would be 2:30 in California. Would that work for you, Joan?
Yeah.
So let's go with 5:30 to make sure that Sheila can be present. And it sounds like Alan is okay with 5:30. So if Samantha and George have no objections, the meeting for February 16th will be at 5:30, and we may be kind of sticking with that time since we know that Sheila works during the day. So in terms of wrapping up this conversation, let me just say, as the organizer, the reason you're being asked to do this is because it helps me see what skills are available for people to, or what skills you have to actually do the organizing that gets us to where we are over the next 2 years. And one of the points that Sheila brought up that's really important is the national work. See, in 2014, there was an article in the Atlantic called The Case for Reparations that set out a firestorm of education. It was from that moment that everybody was talking about reparations. So it is not that people don't know about it. You may not know as much as you would like to know, but I can tell you in Philadelphia, I know a whole bunch of people that's talking about reparations and working on reparations. So when I do the tour and we pass through Philadelphia, you'll see those people, Sheila.
No, I know a lot of them. You and I know quite a few of the same people. You know, I'm not really talking about us. I am talking about the white community. I'm talking because if they don't go,
stop, Sheila, please stop. Because Sheila, this is something that has to be basically Black led. So I know that there are very few people Black in Ann Arbor, which is why I was trying to connect Alan with the Black people that my comrade knows in the area. So if you're trying to lead the work as a white person, it's a mistake. So you really want to collaborate with the Black people in the communities where you are to try to get the work done. See, part of this work is building diversity, equity, and inclusion in our work in Wilmington. So we have 3 minutes left to end the call. So George, I know you didn't do your visioning part. So George, if you could do your visioning part, and then we can close out, because we'll have this same discussion or a similar discussion in February. So George, what do you have to add?
Thanks.
Because we do have a hard stop at 3.
Yes, ma'am. I see us doing education from the ground up, starting with, for me in Gastonia, it's the parents of that teacher who teaches Black history and letting them know what's going on, and communities where low-income people are living, and faith communities. And our work in Gaston County will be connected with what happens in Mecklenburg County. Sam, we can, if I'm wrong on this, you can let me know, but we're doing education based on the people that we're working with that represent our partners. A lot of them are community folks as well, affected folks. And over half of the people who were there Monday were people of color, which is good. And then that education goes so that Charlotte passes a resolution before Gastonia, because we're not likely to win before Charlotte wins. And regularly going to those city council meetings, building power and making demands is what I see us doing.
Well, Alan, your hand is up. Unmute yourself and say.
I just wanted to add, this has just ended the United Nations decade for rapprochement between cultures. And they have an action plan and have issued a lot of material. And the entirety of reparations in some way is patterned in relation to how do cultures begin to see themselves as partners and comrades in the development of our society? So I recommend that we use the resources of this rapprochement of cultures as an adjunct in the material on reparations.
30 seconds.
Well, the thing of it is, Alan, we already have the UN relationship with the with a decade. So we don't need to drag anything else in it to kind of muck up the pot. But when we meet next month, we'll talk, because there's a woman I met in Charlotte who's working on the National Low Income Housing Coalition. So I'm going to connect her with the two of you in hopes that she will join Will and participate in this process around reparations as it relates to housing. So thanks to everyone for being here.
Could I just make one last little action here? I think that Cape Cod Wilf should join Boston Wilf to write a letter of congratulations to the Boston City Council for passing that resolution, number one. And then from there, move on to other actions.
Well, that sounds wonderful. So it is a people related thing. So writing a letter is a good thing, but it's just
yeah,
task.
right.
So who are the relationships? So the Cape Cod branch and the Boston branch having a joint meeting to talk about how you're going to work on reparations, given what has happened in Boston. So the action activity is about working with people. It's not something you can do alone,
right,
Alan. You have to have a group of people you're working with. That's always the starting point. So we will be talking about this more. The AHR umbrella meeting is January 30th. And so George will get out this recording to everybody. And then when we meet on January 30th, it's the meeting of the whole. And that meeting is what time, George, since you're in charge of the AHR committee, what time is the umbrella meeting on January 30th?
It's 7 o'clock unless Donna changes the time.
So I thought it was 8.
I thought it was 8 too. So
well, I think y'all are probably right. It probably is 8.
So it's 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific.
That's right.
So I will see you all on January 30th, and we'll have our report. And so I'll give the report. But we want this recording to go out to everyone, George, if you could make that happen.
All right, then.
Thank you, everybody.
All right. Thank you, and take care, everyone.
Thank you.
You too.